Thanks for staying with us on the program this morning. We'll begin our review on quite the sad note as tributes continue to pour in following the passing of an icon in Niger Delta, the Pandef leader, Chief Dr. Edwin Clark, at the age of 97. Yesterday, the news broke, but we were told by the family that late Chief Dr. Edwin Clark had passed on Monday. The family said, according to reports on the Vanguard newspaper, that even in his last words, he remained a true nationalist. Well, joining me in the studio as we begin this conversation is a revered economic analyst and current affairs commentator, Dr. Aliyu Ilias. Good morning to you, Doctor.
Good morning.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
How much of a sad news is this, following his involvements in previous governments, even from the First Republic, the passing of Chief Dr. Edwin Clark at 97?
Right. I think it's a sad one for the country, but it's a fulfilled life, I should say, because he has achieved a whole lot. But it's so sad that we have Paradebanjo passed us, is it 2 days? Then we also have Edwin Clark passed. And if you look at these two people, they are vocal and they are legendary in their advocacy for a better Nigeria, especially Edwin Clark in terms of resource control and a lot of things. So I think we are going to miss them, because I doubt if we would have true nationalists like this icon that we have. And some of us are even some of millennials. We have seen their hands, because virtually everything they put on their contributions, they express their views, and they will bring that legendary Midas touch to every discussion. So it's a sad one, but we hope God will comfort the family, and we want to see more nationalists like these people.
Well, it's with the hopes that in the coming days, his immortalization too would also highlight some of the significant contributions he has made to Nigeria, and particularly the Niger Delta, which he hails from. Now, then moving on to our first issue in the news here as it concerns some of the decisions by the Senate and by extension the National Assembly that would reshape the spending of government in the 2025 fiscal year. We have news this morning that in a revision of the 2025 budget following some allocations errors spotted by the Senate, capital expenditure has been cut by over 500 billion naira, and other sectors in the NSA, the police, will be affected by these changes to the 2025 budget. What do you make of this?
Well, it's on a sad one that we are cutting our budget. For me, I'm an advocate of more budget. I think this budget is too small, 54 trillion. I expect Nigeria to be around 100 trillion at now, and now we are still having that. That's not a good news, as it were, that we are going to reduce it, and we are reducing. We are now still reducing at capital expenditure. You will recall that capital expenditure is what benefits the totality of Nigerians, because it caters for social infrastructure, road, health, education, and a whole lot of things. And you could see that if you look at the work of police itself, it's more social in nature, because it's a security that we own. So I think we need to look at that area. Why should it be that it is on capital expenditure we actually are cutting? I think, in as much as I believe we are going to have supplementary budget, as it were, why not find a way to manage it? Then when the time we get to supplementary budget, you find a way to bring it in, not removing or cutting the budget that we think is not enough already.
Now, the budget is already in deficit. I don't know if this decision is to shore up for the deficit of over 13.4 trillion naira. Many talked about the fact that before the National Assembly even decided to cut this capital expenditure, it also approved an addition 700 or 750 billion naira to the earlier budget submitted by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Was this in some sort of haste, or wasn't it scrutinized owing to the time constraint? Because we had the president of the Senate saying going into 2026, the executive should try to send the budget at least 3 months earlier to allow for this extensive deliberation.
It's quite instructive that we'll have the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, saying that there is need for us to have a budget on time. I think that's the practice, and we must celebrate and appreciate President Muhammadu Buhari for that. He was consistent in doing so. He came to correct it, and he was consistent. So we hope this government will continue. But in terms of deficit, I don't think anything is bad in deficit budget. Having deficit budget is not bad. Even advanced economy also have deficit budget. But the only fact is that what is the rationale behind what we are doing? You recall that you add and now you are removing again. It does not really. Perhaps we could say that it's what interests you that you actually add. Why you think you can remove what actually does not interest. So, but I think they should not even have remove anything. They should have make it and adjust it in a way that by the time they are bringing up supplementary budget, it will add to, because I'm sure by third quarter of this year we'll have more money, because if you look at the economy now, I think this government is raking in more money. You will recall that the budget was around 49 before, until it was said that FIRS and customers actually bring in more money.
The expected revenue targets.
Exactly. So for me, I think we should have leave it, and because we need more money in fact for more budget, especially even if you look at health sector now, because of what happened from Trump administration, some budget has been cut. I mean, some external support has been cut. So there's need for us to actually canvass for more money within. So I think there's no need for cutting of budget.
Now, even in shaping conversations, the president is yet to assent to it. Many talk about the fact that this is just merely a proposal of how the government ought to spend its money, and not in actuality money on ground to be spent.
Right, that's correct. Budget is a proposal of expected income and expected expenditure. So in the long run,
that's what I'm driving to.
Right.
Now, even in the indices that has been outlined, the MTC government is drumming its drums and saying we're keeping up with the targeted indices. Look at where the exchange rate is. It's almost at the 1,500 naira to a dollar we targeted. Look at the OPEC report on what we had as opt production in the month of January. We're reaching towards the targeted barrels per day we envision to sustain this budget. Do you think it's quite right to celebrate, or it's too early? They're also talking about the fact that they haven't imported any fuel into the country in 2025.
Well, for me, I think it's too early to actually bring about that assumption. I think it's wrong to bring. It's just too early, because the budget has not even commenced. It is better that comments that you say you have to celebrate. So why not mention the issue of inflation? Even at the point of rebasing inflation to 24%, you still do not have, I can tell you that we can still not achieve that 15% proposal. But it's a budget, so there's room for it to actually overshoot or under achieve what you do. But the best thing is that let's at least achieve it maybe 85-90%.
Now, in achieving it, how do we gauge when it's gotten to that 85-90%?
Well, it's pretty clear. You recall that when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu presented the budget, he was giving the budget performance of last year. But for me, I think there is a lot of indices we can use to check if we have our target. I think the first thing is the baseline, such as dollar value, such as inflation rate, such as barrel per day that we produce. So these are the things that we need to. Then how well, for me, the only thing I want to also always look at it is the capital expenditure. Has the capital expenditure actually achieved its aim? If it achieves its aim, that's when Nigeria benefits, because I can tell you there's no way recurrent expenditure will not be expended. But where everything mostly fall on capital expenditure. So I will only want to measure it by the level of implementation of capital expenditure.
Now, important to also mention is our debt servicing.
Right. Well, from the way things are now, the more the forex got bad, the more your debt service will increase. We are talking about debt to revenue, and I'm sure by the time they rebase our GDP now, Nigeria will say yes, our debt to GDP it's a good one. But we must not deceive ourselves in this Nigeria economy. So for me, our performance must shown through capital expenditure.
Now, you had mentioned earlier, especially with the coming back of President Donald Trump, some of the trade sanctions, rejigs in aids being sent to other countries, health and education are two key sectors that Nigerians have been conversing for improved allocations to. We don't know if the National Assembly, in this cut of 500 billion in capital expenditure, would also revisit the 1.07 billion naira allocated to the health sector. In line with this, we also heard the minister yesterday talking about the number of Nigerian workers whose salaries were funded by such aids. What would be your recommendations in that regard?
Right. I think first and foremost, I don't want to see them reducing from health. If you have to reduce, not health at all, because health is a critical area that we must focus on. And you agree with me that in health, we have been having a lot of issues in that area. And coupled with the fact that Donald Trump has actually cutting some aid coming to Nigeria in terms of health and education. So I expect the National Assembly to find a way to avoid reducing from that sector. Then from what the Alipate also said, that they actually help us to pay. True. If you look at most of our health workers, they also always have engagement with the international
28,000 health workers.
Right.
That's the figure he quoted.
It's quite a big one, but I think National Assembly has actually input is about 300 billion to actually work on the shortfall, but I don't think it's enough, and that's why we must say that we must continue to look at how to raise more money to support that sector, because this is going to expose us seriously the level of our health facility challenges and our attention. And I also pray that we will not have a breakout of what do we call it, a noble ailments. Record that when something like COVID-19, let's say force majeure, we pray that we will not see force majeure related to health that will expose us the more, because we don't really have shock absorber to absorb those challenges. But I think Alipate is on his game, so we hope, and he has a wider experience. Perhaps it is not only USAID that actually fund, they may be one of the largest funder, but we still have Gavi. I think Gavi fund more, though Gavi is in the area of maybe vaccine and what have you. So I think Gavi can also be canvassed more to support us, because at this point in time, we need more health support to actually move ahead.
Well, the Minister of Health and Social Welfare, Dr. Alipate, raised the alarm of 28,000 workers whose salaries were also tied to the funds coming in from international donors. And with President Trump's new trade sanctions, those aids have been stopped. He was talking about ways to ensure that those workers get their salaries. And now that the National Assembly is revising the 2025 budget, dotting the I's and crossing the T's where errors have been noted, there's some cuts in earlier provisions for capital and recurrent expenditure. And for capital expenditure, which a lot of persons say is more important and crucial toward infrastructural development, it has been cut by over 500 billion naira. We'll also wait to see how it goes in terms of the presidential assets, noting that the bill has passed third and final reading in both chambers of the National Assembly. Now, Dr. Aliyu Ilias had earlier mentioned that the key indices to assess the budget performance going into the year would also be based on our crude oil production, the exchange rates, to name but a few. Now, talking about the crude oil production, the NNPCL has been quite dismayed by a viral video a content creator put out there on social media, following what he called his own investigative research. He went to different fuel stations, particularly the NNPCL and MRS filling station, obtained samples of fuels, did an experiment on the combustion time and the quality, and has alleged that the quality of fuel from NNPCL is not as it says it is. Well, this morning, the NNPCL is quite angry at this report.
Right.
They're threatening legal sanction. They're saying such expository videos demarket Nigeria's quality of fuel.
Right. I think the best thing to do is to have another set of investigation, and it should not be from NNPCL. But I don't think it's a bad one for a citizen to think. Let me make it
citizen journalism.
Citizen journalism. He actually went there practically, and it was actually shown. So let's have another review of it. But I don't think threatening him for legal sanction it's good enough. Perhaps Nigeria we must be careful too. We could also say it could be sponsored, because you can't take that away from it, because why was he the only one?
Doctor, not to cut you.
Right.
Talking about sponsorship.
Yes.
Last year, Nigerians remember when two notable entities, the NMDPR and Dangote Refinery, were embroiled in this same battle and debate about the quality of his diesel.
Right.
It was subjected to laboratory tests.
Yes.
And we found out that a body as trusted as the NMDPR was capable of giving false information about the quality of Dangote's diesel. If at that level of an organization, it can be this contentious, how much more an individual who put out content online?
But I want to also question the process. So are we saying that NNPC is saying their own is better, or it should be equal? It cannot be equal. So just come forward and prove yourself that your own is actually better. In fact,
we need an independent panel.
We need an independent panel to carry out this, and it must be much more of civil society, not even government oriented. Because I started thinking immediately I saw that video, because most of us enjoy going to NNPC because we believe that NNPC is the last resort whereby you can get the quality the price, the accuracy. But from this, it becomes so serious. Perhaps you also agree with me that Dangote, like I said on this beautiful studio several times, that Dangote need to convince Nigeria more, because I'm an advocate of importation, because I don't want a monopoly. I want whereby we have NNPC supplying the fuel. I want a position whereby Dangote is also doing that, and also want importation, because these three things, just like what we are saying now, will bring what we call equilibrium for Nigeria to be better off. Because if it's only Dangote and it's only NNPC, it becomes a serious issue. But now we have importation, we have Dangote, and we have NNPC, which I think NNPC is also trying to take the lead, but you should always remember they are now a business entity, not like government as it were before. So I think this expository, it's a good one for Nigerians. It's a good, but I also want Dangote, NNPC to trade with caution, because if you say you take this person or take legal action, you are calling for more troubles. People will expose you the more, and people have this that we call citizen journalism, like you said. People have right to carry out such investigation, and it was well perfected by that person.
He documented it.
Very well documented.
When he drove into the station,
every stages of it.
Samples, when he put it to test,
every stages.
The one even used the two generation.
Very new generator. But I only say, if I have the opportunity of advising him, should I bring like 3-4 people, to join him. Someone could be from NNPC, someone could be from Dangote, and they will see what is actually happening, and they can now attest to. But Itape is the only one that actually carry out that investigation. But that's why we need another level of investigation.
Now, also to look at the NNPC in terms of its claim of innocence. It's the talk of adulteration following the supply chain.
Right.
They could claim that from depot loading up until when it gets to the station, the quality of fuel is intact, but cannot vouch for what fuel stations do to their pumps, which Nigerians have complained over time.
Correct.
Or even in adding other substances.
You're absolutely correct, and I agree with that. Problem with supply chain is that there may not be a good monitoring, processes, and that's a good problem. Remember, even the one they blended, we don't know the process that it's come
blending
through.
Part in Malta.
In Malta, the other blending even in Nigeria. Are you sure we are not blending now? So the fact is that the process of that supply chain need to be also monitored. But perhaps the person who bring out this thing actually bring it based on what the last how do I call it? How do we call it? The last mile? The point at which they are dispensing. Yes, at the point of dispensing, that's what he's using, and so you won't blame him for the processes that those things has
because this is what almost all Nigerians also face.
Exactly.
From that point of dispensing.
Exactly. In fact, for me, I think there's it for us also as a citizen to start practicing and check that, because I have to give MRS a chance now, and that's what it simply means. So we should have to look at that,
because in their credit, it seems as though their quality
is better, and we are buying more. It's even cheap, right? And the quality is there according to that report. So
and I'm back to this allegation of sponsorship.
Right.
Does this in any way demarket Dangote? Because I had to cite that NNPC.
Market Dangote or demarket Dangote?
Market Dangote, right? Demarkets the NNPC.
NNPC. Well, clearly, that's what it simply means. Every investigation comparing two things will definitely have a tone of demarketing and a tone of marketing. For me, I think that actually market Dangote more. And that's why I'm saying that we should also be careful of sponsorship. Because you remember, Dangote is a private entity. Dangote, from different perspectives, have been trying to actually convince Nigeria the more. He has actually sued that there should not be importation. He actually said his own is better. I remember his manager said so. He's actually also let us know that he has a lot that he can even serve Nigeria as it were, all Nigeria needs. So if you look at all different things, and it's a private company, every private company needs to actually market themselves, so they are doing their job, but sponsoring people will be maybe too far if it would discover that that's what really happened.
It may seem as though this month is a good month for Dangote. He's getting further publicity across all the newspapers this morning. Much talks on what his new net worth is, with over $24 billion credited to him. He's now 86 on the rankings of the world's richest. It almost feels as though his what I call it, his stocks are higher even at the point of this report's coming in. What do you project for Dangote?
No, take it or leave it. Dangote is the best of Africa. He's the richest man in Africa. His investment speaks for him. Right. Was it last 3 days? I read the news somewhere that Dangote Pojo is out. You know, I think he invests in
Kaduna.
Kaduna. So you could see everything is actually working for. But look at that multi-million-dollar investment. Who can actually do that in Africa? And global community also recognize that. So it's a shrewd businessman who has actually paid the price to get to where he is. So for me, I think it's a good one for him. But the only thing is that as a Nigerians, we want to also benefit from his business. You should also consider us, because it's as if every sector Dangote go, he seems to take the monopoly of that sector.
And you're one for free market system.
Free markets, we want competition. We don't like, a good example is cement. Imagine if we allow importation of cement. Will cement be 9,000 naira? I doubt if it will get to that level. It will be around 6,000 or 5,000, because there will be serious and stiffer competition. But it is as if though Dangote is the monopoly, has the monopoly. Lafarge and Bua are actually following him.
Even on this importation matter, this morning the NNPCL is boasting that since the start of the year 2025, it has not imported any fuel, because there are some reports in certain quarters that 200 million liters of fuel were imported. You remember Dangote is in court as well, talking about infringements in the PIA,
right.
And the fact the licenses are being handed out for importation, which contravenes his agreement originally with the federal government.
In as much as we don't have a data to prove that they have actually imported, so we have to take them at this point for their words, because we don't really have. But for Dangote to say they should not import, I don't want to agree with that. You know, there must be competition, and the competition is what we are seeing now. That competition, Dangote should only better his lot, just like the way we have this expository report that actually shows that he's actually doing well in terms of quality. And I'm sure he will not want to, you know, he's a private entity. Every private entity believes that if you don't produce, you don't bring out quality, over time you'll be out of business. So he's trying to safeguard his own area too. Why NNPC should do the needful. But the question is that, where is NNPC actually getting his own fuel? I think that's my own concern. Where? Because I recall that Warri Refinery and Port Harcourt Refinery cannot even give Nigeria up to 4% of what we need in a day. So definitely they will be important. That's what does I think NNPC will be important. I expect them to import, because that's where you can use to compete with Dangote. They don't have refinery that can give you quarter of what Dangote will give you. Dangote is enough to even give Nigeria what they need every day. So I don't know if NNPC insisted that they are not important. So where are you getting your fuel? I think it's a question for them to answer.
Now, moving on to another key indices in the news this morning is the NBS January report. It's finally here. It was delayed for over 48 hours. A lot of economics were asking why. Projections were on the fact that the methodologies used are to allow for current fluctuations in prices in the market so Nigerians can measure it in real time. That was the excuse that was given. And now we see inflation dropping to 24.48%. I see you smiling already. Let's get your thoughts.
You know, as an economist, I'm interested in what happens in that sector. And we have been waiting to see actually what will happen. We're waiting for rebasing. We're waiting for NBS report. But interestingly, I think NBS is on top of their game, because they said their basket for measurement is around 750. They have moved it to about 960 or so. Rebasing. Let's discuss rebasing. It's a normal thing to happen, and it's we expect to rebase at every 5 years. But Nigerians have actually waited for this long to rebase the economy. And the fact is that our rebasing our base year was 2009. So, and that's what we base our decision, our calculation upon. But now we have rebased back to 2024. So has it changed Nigeria economy? The answer is no. Has it make Nigeria economy better? The answer is no. Has it make goods and services to reduce? The answer is no. Has it helped our inflation? The answer is no. The only difference is that they change in figure. So we have 34.8% before the rebasing, when we base it on 2009. But now that we're into 2024, we're now having a 24%. So it simply means the yardstick, the base, that's what we are actually looking at. So it does not really mean that we have
it does not reflect,
but I must also
realities.
But we only have challenge in terms of methodology of the NBS boss. You will recall that I started having issue with the method used for unemployment, because we are looking at macroeconomic issues now. So if you look at the unemployment, they said that once you work in 1 hour in a week, you attempt to have worked. So, but before was that once you work you are calculating 20 hours. It is assumed you have worked in a week. So if you look at the two comparisons, you see that how can you say 1 hour and somebody have worked, in a week? And that's why we say we now have about 4% rate of unemployment, which we know clearly
it doesn't clearly reflect
the real. I'm telling you, it doesn't clearly reflect. We don't have less than 25%. If you ask me, and what are we even talking about? What about people that are underemployed? A lot of things are actually happening. We're not in a good economy whereby your 1 hour can be enough in a day. When you go to people are in the Western world, you working 1 hour, you can go and watch football and be assured that
the remuneration you get
because of the value of the currency. But in Nigeria today, you cannot say if you have 5,000 naira even a day that's enough, because you have to transport yourself to and fro a place like maybe you live in Gogolada and you want to come to Abuja.
We'll come to that in terms of transportation and spending. But another key thing to point out from this report is that price pressures are still persisting.
Right.
And normally, if you're saying inflation has dropped, shouldn't it also relate to a corresponding drop in price?
No. In this case, inflation has not dropped. It's just the yardstick for measuring that's changed. Because if you look at it, food inflation is about 39%, but having rebased it, we have 26%. Does it mean Gary has cheap in the market? Does it mean beans has actually? Does it mean cost of rice has reduced from about 90-something thousand naira? The answer is no. So for a layman, I must tell you that there is no difference in the Nigerian economy. The only thing is that it has a positive externalities. And what's the positive externality is that now Nigerian economy is now being seen as being better, especially for foreign direct investment, because an investor who is coming to Nigeria will be thinking 34% inflation no is no good area for me. But if he sees that we have 24% inflation, well, I think is a good one. Food is 26% inflation. They will now come.
So it could be said that this targeted at
investors, and this government is also very smart. I should use that again. This government have a way of painting everything, as if it's actually better, but that does not really reflect the true economy. If I tell you that 24% is inflation, and you go to the market, you see the way how things are, you agree with me. And if you also look at other macroeconomic indices like Forex, you discover that Nigeria is not actually better, because if you say the dollar is now 1,550 naira to compare to naira, you see that you agree with me that we are not in a better economy. So this is good for to just look at the outlook and for perception of maybe global economy that Nigeria is actually.
Let's bring it now home, away from the perception of the global economy down to access to capital.
Right.
Now, would experts more like yourself be expecting that at this point the CBN should also reflect a lower interest rate, since we're seeing our inflation and the measurements have changed?
Right. I think that will have an effect too, because if you look at the GDP, very soon I think GDP will be out, and that GDP will reflect our per capita to seem to better. But for me, I think I have issue with hawkish approach that CBN is using. We have serious issue on interest rate, because as a businessman, and even the little we are doing, we think we should go to bank to get money to use. But every businessman is avoiding going to bank because of the level of interest. And when businessmen do not go to bank to get more money, that simply means there will be unemployment, because you will obviously not employ. And when you don't employ, that means there will be reduction in production, and that will affect the GDP. And that's why I'm saying, to some extent, even the rebasing will make economy seem better than it is.
Now, let's still speak with another angle of this report. We've looked at it from what you say in the eyes of the common man. The figures are not reflecting in terms of what their pockets can afford.
At all.
Now, the other side of this report is in consumer spending indications. Now, we're told that Nigerian households have prioritized spending, or you were talking about transportation earlier, to add to that, rent and health, as against food consumption. You remember a couple of weeks ago, or months ago rather, it was talking about how much Nigerian households spend on food consumption.
Yes.
A large part of their income, if not
it's about 60%.
60% of their income.
Yes.
Help us understand this report now that is saying a change of priority in the way Nigerian households are spending.
Right. Even though it have negative effect on Nigeria in the long run, because health is wealth, and if you don't consume well, you don't eat well, it might reflect in your health. But the major priority, we have major needs. So not really want at this point. So what are the major needs? The major need is house, shelter, feeding, clothing. Now health is becoming a major too, because if you look at health commodities now, it's very, very expensive. So it's a sad one that Nigeria are now shifting from food consumption to transportation. Imagine, because transportation seem to collect more. Food before take more, but now transportation is also collecting more. So from his analysis, and I'm sure if you look at this current NBS, he's very good at giving caveats. When he bring out the analysis that this is a rebasing what have you, he also said that it does not reflect that, it does not mean that the market is now better. He has also come clean that now that people are now looking at health, transportation more compared to, and that's a sad one. You recall that we have homegrown school feeding program. I'm not sure this government sustain it, right? And if you go to other countries, they especially provide meals for children, because they know what feeding helps education. Nutrition is very, very key. It has a correlation to what actually comes from people, even the thinking. For me and you, we always say, have one adage in my language, that when feeding is out of it, at least poverty is reduced to an extent. But at this point in time, people are even rationing what they eat compared to the transport they are going to
and use. Even the quality of what they eat.
I'm telling you, that's the problem. Like, let's even come to local balance. The little, before your muscle, the muscle, or what have you, the size of food used to be big, but now it is very, 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 very small. But it's not that do you belly food. The question is that do you eat? In our local parliament, we say you belly food. No, there's no need to even ask, do you belly food? Then. You don't chop, but at least you don't chop. That's okay. And that's Nigeria for you now.
Now, before we leave this, the other angle is the cost of healthcare. Because as much as we're saying that Nigerian households are prioritizing on health, the cost of healthcare has now, by this report also, doubled from 3% to 6.1%.
That is what we said about import substitution or having alternative. You recall that when GSK, especially when they move out of Nigeria, when all those medical, big medical companies moved out of Nigeria, most of us say that it's going to reflect on Nigerian health. I can tell you clearly now that, let's even look at inhaler that we used to buy at 1,200 is now over 10,000 naira. If you go to any health facility now, you discover that it's very, very expensive. In fact, we pray not to seek at this point because it's quite very, very expensive. And even the Ali Pate who talked about free cesarean session for people. I don't think if I Google that teaching hospital has came out to say no, we have not actually enjoyed it yet.
As a matter of fact, they said none of the targeted beneficiaries qualify.
Can you imagine? So the major thing I'm actually saying now is that it is a clear thing that our health facility or health medicine is now very, very expensive. In fact, it's about 10. The geometric increase is just too high. You need to know. I visited just recently, and I discovered that the amount we are paying is very, very high. And that's why I said capital expenditure must drive at this area. But the only thing I think we Nigeria need to do, we must do import substitution, and government must come to empower those pharmaceutical companies to actually start producing in Nigeria, because forex does not actually help, and those that are actually producing are actually living ashore. So it's a serious problem.
Now this government also talked about access to funds for civil servants to curb out-of-pocket spending for purchase of cars and other issues they may need. But on conversations of our national health insurance cover, this conversation has been elusive, Doctor, for over a decade now.
You recall that this present minister is nomenclature is Minister of Health and Social Welfare. So when I got to see that social welfare, my thinking is that they are going to do an insurance coverage. If you go to Ghana have over 75% insurance coverage, health insurance coverage. If not up to 80. But I can't say we have even up to 15%, because the only people that have health coverage in Nigeria are civil servant. And how well is it also? Then what is the percentage of them? I don't think civil servants that have health coverage in Nigeria are up to 20%. So, and I think this minister nomenclature signify that they will bring private sectors and most of us into that covers that we can actually apply. If Ghana can have up to 80%, health coverage, health insurance coverage, what stop Nigeria to have such coverage? And I think we need to do more beyond the rhetorics. I expect this minister to do more because it's called social welfare. So I was looking at that direction. So what is the nomenclature of social welfare? What is actually doing? And health is not what you actually plan for. Like he actually, they interview him and he actually acknowledged that is not what you actually plan for. And we are suffering from, in fact, the issue of cancer and other health issues are becoming much more serious. And we also speak about vaccine. Until we start producing all those things in-house in Nigeria, that's when, and he's an expert in vaccine, because I'm sure he worked with Gavi and other big health organization globally. So I think he should bring his experience to bear in India so that we can have a good health coverage.
Well, it's quite on the basis the doctor has also said that he anticipates the GDP rebasing. Now that we have the inflation rates following the CPI rebasing, the Consumer Price Index of food prices, services is published by National Bureau of Statistics. The body empowered to do so in Nigeria. Globally, there's a practice of doing this after every 10 decades. The last one done here in Nigeria was in 2009, as rightly said by Doctor, up until 2025 before we have a rebasing. The methodologies continue to remain quite questionable by economic experts much like Dr. Aliyu Ilias. Now, focus is on Nigeria's Apex Bank in our next two conversations. Two papers this morning have two reports. The first is that CBN has issued a directive to banks to expose dormant accounts and unclaimed funds.
Quite, it's now every year thing. Because I recall every CBN governor will always come and say, bring about the details of dormant accounts. But I don't think at this point in time, CBN actually need to ask them. CBN should go and audit that. No, there is a two different thing. Bring it as different from audit it. Why not go to their back end yourself and look at those dormant accounts? You recall there's a case of, is it one woman who said that his husband has some money in the bank and they didn't tell him anything, and she tried to even access it pretty
and
difficult.
Then overnight the money seemed to have
disappear. So these are the things that we need to. So for me, I don't think CBN should stop this rhetoric, come to the public and say, why not go there and do audit bank by bank? How many banks do we have? Do we have up to 50 banks that you cannot do that audit? You have a team and they'll sit there and actually audit those dormant accounts and actually publicize those things. I recall that most brokers, most stock people that have stock discover that they want to actually go and got their stock. I noticed that most how do I call it? There's a name they call it. Most registrars, they will always come out and say there's an exhibition that there's this unclaimed dividend that if you are the owner, kindly come. They list it out time by time. In fact, they will go to exhibition and show you that people have some dividend. They've not seen their family to come and claim it. Why is bank not also doing that? Maybe every 3 years, if nobody touches a particular account, bring it out and people will actually understand who actually have some funds.
And Doctor, this unclaimed funds has also brought into mind this question of next of kin. I remember 5 years ago, there was a national debate following persons who loved one had passed on and they were next of kin to access these funds. About 4 of them, if I'm not mistaken, came to the media and were crying out that by law and the legal checks and processes, it almost feels as though that next of kin statement in forms filled in bank is just statutory.
Right.
When you go to access the unclaimed
the
funds,
criteria. The criteria, I think, is another problem. We need to interrogate that criteria. Now, I think maybe for what you just said now, I will engage save the consumers to actually look into that area, the criteria to claim any benefit of next of, so that we can review it and see maybe it's quite difficult or not difficult. So we have to x-ray the processes itself, because if we don't integrate it, people will keep abandoning those things. Perhaps I don't think it's happening in Western one. That's part of what we are going to interrogate. If they don't see the owner of account accessing the account for 1 year, 2 years, it's just normal for you to put a kind of alarm that will alert you that this account has not been accessed for 2 years. Then you put a call to the person that you have not accessed your account over time, and beyond that, if the person is not available, you call the next of kin. It's just normal third practice if there is no any sure deal therein, or bank is actually benefiting from such.
Because that's another key.
Yes, because it simply means that if I have millions of naira in bank and I didn't check it, I believe bank is trading it, which is, I think, is normal. That's a business of bank to actually loan out money and it's simply using people's money in their custody to actually achieve that. But for next of kin to not be able to access, or for him not to even know what happens, it's a serious issue. And you recall that there are even some fund that the family may not even know their father or their mother actually has.
But in due diligence, I'm thinking that if such funds lie and the bank, through the rigorous account opening process, has the forms filled with next of kin, should the owner of the account pass, it shouldn't be due diligence to pick up that fund, put a call out to the next of kin and say, XYZ amount is in so and so account, can you come for verification? That's
the correct thing to do, but because of their personal interest, and that's why I said it's not good enough for even I cannot agree that CBN is not aware of what is actually happening. Why don't you audit all this maybe every 2 years or every 5 years? So by the time you are auditing it, even the banks will be aware that, oh, please let us call before they actually. So there should be a law guiding that. Maybe there is a lacuna. There is a lacuna that does not capture the banks calling the next of kin when they don't get to hear from the real owner of a particular account.
Now the other newspaper, we might look at it again, greeting your screens, was the Nation newspaper. It had the headline that CBN has sacked bank chiefs with what was called toxic bank loans. Now the federal government has also declared its intention for single-digit loans for SMEs. If we have the Nation newspaper, we'll just glance through it as well, and we'll take a read on some of those key stories that were published earlier. The headline there, CBN axes banks chiefs with toxic loans, is also accompanied by a commendation coming from the National Pensions Commission, commending President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the Federal Executive Council for a historic relief with an outstanding of 758 billion naira, which bonds to settle such pension liabilities under the contributory pension schemes. The intervention was made on Tuesday, 4th February 2025, and they say it marks a watershed moment in Nigerians' pension administration. But let's start first with this report of toxic loans and the drive to have single-digit loans for SMEs.
Right. I recall that Cecilia Ibru of Oceanic Bank then actually suffered sanction because of what? Because of the bad loans. I remember, is there anything like bad loans? I believe that banks actually give loans to who they actually want to give loan to, especially those high net worth loan. I don't think a poor man will be able to access 500 million, 200 million naira loan. Now, if you look at those people that are owing a lot, have their way of fighting even the bank. They will say, take me to court. After they are owing 200 million, because they know that going to court will actually elongated the payment period. Then we're talking about SMEs. If it is until Nigeria government is serious, that is when we can have a better economy in Nigeria. And how do we have better economy? It is crystal clear that 70% of Nigerians are into small businesses. So by the time you are able to support these small businesses, that's when. But I can tell you, small businesses find it difficult to access loan. You know why? Bring a collateral, and the collateral will be landed property. I was trying to access APG for a particular thing. You need to see what the conditionalities they said we should bring, which is just a bank guarantee. So I said, how can we now do business if ordinary APG have this rigor? In fact, for the past 2 weeks, I've been struggling to fill the form, to bring everything. And how much are we talking about? 34,000 naira. You know, and you have to do a lot of processes and what have you. So I think it is serious issue that we need to look into. And until that happens, that we have small business flourishing, for me, I think they should have a particular money earmarked for small businesses to access. That's when we can actually grow. And that's why most businesses hardly survive. When they start, they find it difficult to actually get the balance. And that's what we think Bank of Industry should embark on the more. Because I recall during Buhari, there's a lot of people that are able to access loan, a lot of fund. Even some are even, what do you call it? The one that you will not return. Not loan now. What do you call it?
Grants.
Grants. So I'm able to access grants even from Bank of Industry. I think we should revisit that and do that more in this Tinubu administration.
Now, talking about the President Tinubu administration, this commendation letter we've seen on 2 newspapers, both The Nation and the Daily Trust, from the Pension Com, thanking the President and the Federal Executive Council for over 758 billion naira in bonds to settle outstanding pension liabilities.
Nigeria is a funny country, sometimes comical. When people that deserve to be paid, you delay them. Now that you see you are still being commended, we wouldn't say it's Tinubu fault, but government is a continuum. So once you inherit any presidency, you inherit the goods and the what and the bad of it. So you must have to do it. So since the PENCOM is commending the president, I join them to commend the president. Thank you for helping our senior citizens.
Well, the current administration seems to have an improved policy direction towards senior citizens in the country, and this might be another testament in its books, with 758 billion naira in bonds going to the National Pension Commission to settle outstanding liabilities. PENCOM has called it a watershed moment in its national history. Now, this brings us to another telling moment in our national history. A lawmaker in the United States of America has gone viral for the past fortnight, saying that aid from the U.S. was used to finance Boko Haram in Nigeria. It was then under the Barack Obama administration that this allegation stemmed from. Now, this has put into question the credibility of certain agencies in the country. Now, Senator Aliyu Ilias, leading other Borno delegations, has called for investigations. But as it stands now, there's yet to be a national statement either from the presidency in response to these hefty allegations.
Right. I think that statement is very fragile. And the fact is that we cannot substantiate that statement until a special investigation. Because I've seen a different news coming up. But I only recall that last time I went to Yobe and discovered that a particular agency is feeding 200,000 people. So when I was feeding 200,000 people, that they give them groundnut oil, rice every month and other things to use. And now imagine if these people are being fed every month like this, if they find it easy, would they want to work at all? Would they want this thing to stop? So if you look at it in that direction, you see that people maybe are getting relaxed. Then in terms of sponsorship, issue of Boko Haram, for me, I believe there's an external hand sponsoring these terrorists. It's not only Boko Haram, even M3, even other faction of them, because it's not easy for them to have those weapons they're having. And there's a claim,
the sophistication of their own weapons.
I'm telling you, to buy AK-47, I don't think it's less than 3 million. And they have plenty of it. So where is the fund coming and where is it passing? How does it get to them? And most of them, when you find out they have hard currencies. So
even during the cash crunch, we saw those viral videos of terrorists in the bushes with the new naira notes.
I'm telling you,
do not have.
They find access to those. So I agree that there is a sponsorship, but I don't agree 100% that is being sponsored by USAID, because though the name USAID is much more for development, and they sponsor. I think they are the leading donor in Nigeria, if I'm not mistaken.
Especially with health interventions.
Especially with health interventions. So I think we need to look at that and take a cautious action in doing this, so that we won't have a lot of issues. You recall also that statement is not for Nigeria directly. You recall, the man does not mention Nigeria, but if you look at, I think, is it Kenya that is benefiting more? I think Ethiopia. A lot of countries in Africa are benefiting from USAID. So we cannot say holistically that's it, but I think it should be checked. And for federal government not to have said anything, I think maybe they are actually carrying out their own research. Remember, those people are actually supporting us to really reduce what we don't have the power. Recall, we just talked about health sector, where they are helping to pay about 28,000 health workers. So we need to be cautious about those allegations.
Now, in closing, just one more subject to get your thoughts on it when we close off. Is workers in 109 embassies who are lamenting over 6 months on paid salaries. It's the headline story on the Punch newspaper. Again, many have been talking about the ambassadors who are supposed to be heading these embassies in Nigeria and the fact that there needs to be a statement from the presidency in that regard as well.
Honestly, if there's anything that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu does not take serious, I'll say it's the issue of our consulates. Honestly, because up to now, I don't think we have substantial ambassadors or people with career ambassadors. I don't think he has said anything about, and it's not a good one because it's not giving us good representation anywhere we go. So I think they should do more about, and it's so sad that some people are still saying they have not been paid. So these are the things that we should look at. So for me, I would like to urge President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the presidency and the Federal Minister of Foreign Affairs to look into that direction. It's not a good one for Nigeria.
Well, with that, I think it's a fine place to leave it on the program. I must appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.